The club in the young Jeep, going to the club in the young Jeep, going to the club in the young Jeep. Welcome everyone to the first episode of What You've Been Up To, where I, Michael, aka duck0, or a million other aliases out there on the internet, and talking to rs0n Live himself, aka rs0n, about what he's been up to and what's been going on in his world. So we're going to talk about what he's been doing. We're going to talk about what he's got coming down the pipe and get his take on some current events. rs0n, how you doing today?
I'm doing pretty good. You know, been a lot of work, been pulling a lot of 12-hour days for the past month or so, you know, getting the company and the videos and everything off the ground, but it's going well. Feeling good.
Awesome. Yeah, it's good to hear that, man. What I figured maybe we could start off. What kind of hair day are you having today?
Well, I got a hat on. I think that probably says enough right there, you know. I will tell you, actually, I love that we didn't plan this, by the way. So and then you asked this question. I got one of my favorite comments the other day on one of my YouTube videos that, what exactly did he say? He said, "Can you please cut your hair? I'm having a lot of trouble taking advice from a broccoli head. Love the video," something like that. But yeah, it made me like actually laugh when I read it. I'm going to lean into it. I know I've got that picture with Bob Ross, so maybe I'll Photoshop it to get some broccoli instead of the actual afro. And yeah.
You know, I think we were just talking like Zoom or, Microsoft won't do it, but Zoom or like Google need to come up with like, the enterprise beard filter I thought would be nice, but maybe the enterprise fro filter as well, just so, you can have that thing tightened up. Just in all fairness, I'll answer the same question. Obviously, I'm rocking a hat, but it's because I need to do a little bit of trimming on this guy, but you can tell we got business up front. There is a party forming in the back. So if somebody's having a hard time taking advice from somebody with a broccoli head, I'm not sure how they're going to feel about rocking a mullet. But, got to. Like, I don't have to be in person with anybody professionally for a little while. And I figured before I do, let's just let it flow, So
I love it. No, you're in good shape. Theo Vaughn, he's made the mullet mainstream, right?
He has, man. The Theo Bros. We're gonna test really highly with those folks. So, funny
That's
enough,
good, I think.
Yeah, that is our core audience, basically. So
Viewership just dropped off like 50% like that.
Yeah, I mean, that's either that or we're going to the moon. It's one of the two. It's one or the other with that dude. So
that's a good point. I'm personally a fan of when he was on Big Brother.
Well, I think that what the viewers and listeners out there can expect is that at some point we'll do an after hours episode where this is all we do. I know that at least 3 or 4 people will listen to that and love it. So, but
I like it.
Yeah. So before we get to the after hours, section where we talk about what we like to drink and the Willie Nelson style deep breathing that I know that I'm a fan of. I figured what we could do is we'll just jump right into it. Before we get into what you've been up to, there was a couple of items in the news I wanted to get your take on, and just since this is the first episode, I figured I'd provide a little preamble. This is not intended to be any sort of comprehensive coverage of cybersecurity news. What we're going to do is we're going to hand select a few things to talk about, and I want to hear rs0n's perspective. And the perspective that I think we want to come with here is really one of empathy. We want to understand, why would this kind of thing happen? What's going on with the people involved? And then the other side of that is, for our community, for, the guild, the kind of tribe that you've built, what are the implications there? What does it mean for folks who are down the road in their bug bounty journey, or folks who are just getting started in their journey as an AppSec practitioner? So if it's all right with you, let's get into a few news items. So first and foremost, do you mind talking to us about a new feature that HPE recently released?
Yeah. So I know, we were talking about this a little bit before, but there was a vulnerability that came out recently in one of their platforms, very critical vulnerability that was found, and how do I put this? It's not a bug, it's not a vulnerability, it's a feature. Is probably the best way to say it. So if I remember correctly, there was an endpoint that was built into their web application that if you send a put request to this endpoint, along with a body that had command and what command you wanted to run. And this endpoint, by the way, I know there was a couple before, so it was like tools / something, but the actual path name was execute command. You probably see where we're going with this. Whatever you put in the command in the body with a put request will execute on the local server. So yeah, I don't remember exactly how much the access controls were, but yeah, it's essentially, so what most likely happened was that as they were building this, I would assume that, actually, let me say this, there's probably one or two ways that this happened. Either it was built in as a debug feature or a way to kind of do something while they were developing, and then it was not removed before it got to production, or there was a problem that needed to be solved, and that was the quickest and easiest way to do it. And somehow through that process, the security that should be implemented throughout the CI/CD pipeline as they're planning, as they're developing, they're doing their threat modeling, all that stuff, probably didn't get the opportunity to give the feedback that would have been needed there. So I would assume, given we're talking about HPE's very large company, which, by the way, the headquarters is like walking distance from me right now. And I really thought about going down with the camera after I saw this, be like, hey, can I get an interview with somebody?
Yeah, right. Well, it's important to point out, I think, that we don't have any insider knowledge with this either. Joking, like you could go get some hot takes or reactions from folks down at HPE, but this isn't something we're talking about. This isn't a bug you reported. This was just in the news in an item that you shared with me that, I think initially for the lulls, but, I guess I think what would be helpful for, the folks out there listening to understand is really how does, like, at the human level, how does this kind of thing happen? Like what would drive this kind of decision? And then how does it get as far as, going into production like that?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. And look, I know that, like, kind of as we're initially starting to talk about this, it's not a bug, it's a feature, this and that. Like I'm kind of making a little bit of a light of the situation, but the reality is, like, it's very easy, especially if you've spent your entire career on the offensive side, if you've done bug hunting and everything, but never actually worked on the defensive side or within a company. It's very easy to just look at this as like a failures. Oh my gosh, I can't believe the developers would do this and this and that. I can guarantee you this wasn't the developer's fault. I can guarantee you that. It's anybody who's worked as a practitioner or worked on a blue team and tried to secure an application will tell you that, finding the vulnerabilities is not the issue. The issue is all these different business needs and external forces that are pulling against you, the developers trying to do their job, the security team trying to do their job, the security team having to, and this will especially happen with larger companies, having to deal more with the political side of things than really digging in and getting the ability to do their job. So regardless of what the actual cause was, I mean, certainly I think the fact that it got to production means that they are lacking some security controls within their CI/CD that could be put in there. And again, that goes back to, like, what resources what are they constantly putting out fires to where they don't have the time to do that proactive stuff, right? Because when you're working as a practitioner on a blue team, you're constantly trying to implement proactive controls, but you're entirely at the whim of being reactive, of doing reactive security, when there's incidents, everything. And when you especially start loading up these political things and you've got to go convince people we need to do it, what you find is that you're just basically spinning your wheels in the mud. You're never actually doing any real security. So I would say what probably happened was the developers and the team were given a incredibly tight timeline, to do this. And they found the easiest way to solve this problem. And it was missed throughout the CI/CD, and you have all of those factors coming into play at the same time, right? You have this increased timeline, you have the additional stress and everything that's coming from it. You probably have, and I think most companies have this right now. You probably have limitations on hiring, and you probably also have. I mean, I don't think I've heard anything layoffs at HPE, but right, still people are going to leave. There's going to be churn, and when you can't hire, so yeah. I mean, you just basically get in a situation where you do the best that you can. Mm-hmm. And fundamentally, if the leadership doesn't want the company, or let me say it this way, if the leadership has a very large appetite for risk, mm-hmm. then you as the security engineer aren't able to do, what you need to do sometimes to do as things like this happen. But that's where bug bounty research, right? That's the reason the bug bounties exist, is so that we can be the safety net and catch them when it happens.
Yeah, it's interesting too, because I think when you talk to folks who operate in the bug bounty world, especially the full-time bug hunters, it's funny. If you ask them what they want more of, it's always two things. One, more bounty. Of course, we all want more bounty. We all want more money.
Yep.
But two, and this was interesting, and I think this kind of surprises people, especially on the kind of blue team side or folks running programs. The other thing they want is they want to feel like they're part of the team. And you're highlighting an essential area where they can be a collaborator and part of the team, because the independent bug hunter, they don't have to work through the political mess necessarily. They can just report the bug. Now, they might feel that political mess when it comes time to get response, when it comes time to get paid, all of that sort of stuff. But I think that something that we'll continue to highlight as we do these shows is really just what I would probably call empathy for the program owner, and really understanding what folks want from a program. You've been a program owner, you're in the unique position where you've been a program owner and a full-time hunter and are
Yep.
back full-time hunting again, and so you have a really interesting perspective on that, having been on both sides. But I think most folks have, been on one side and not really been on the other. And for a lot of folks, I think that, when when you learn how to hack a few things, you got a hammer and the world's a nail.
Yep.
And it's hard to see the bigger picture and to understand why, hey, I can get this nail in over here, and you said I shouldn't be able to, but that's not important to us over here on the program side, because we're thinking about the subdivision or at least the house. So it's an interesting balance, and I think that the more that we can expose folks on the hunting side to just a little bit of a window into the program side, it'll probably just lead to better results both for the hunters and for the program owners.
Definitely. And yeah, one point that you hit on that I want to just highlight too for anybody that's watching this a bug bounty hunter that's never worked as a practitioner or done triaging or anything is, I see, and I felt it too. I understand it's very easy to get frustrated from the bug bounty hunter side when you feel like you've found a legitimate security concern, and there's, for whatever reason, right, there's some politics, or for whatever reason the company doesn't understand it. A lot of times people tend to take their frustration out on the individual that is doing the triage. So I would just say, from personal experience, there are times where that person really would like to do something. You know what I mean? It's a lot of times it's out of their control.
Yeah.
It's kind of like when you're talking to somebody at customer service and you're really angry at the company, right? Like, it's that person's just doing their 9 to 5, and they're the ones basically being paid to get yelled at, which is really terrible. Bless them.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's something to keep in mind.
Yeah, I've found with customer service, sometimes those folks are more uncomfortable if you're really nice to them than if you're mean to them. They're just not used to it.
Yes, yeah. They don't trust you. Like, what is this? They think you're like what do they call it? Like a secret shopper or something. I'm sure they have a name for it there.
Exactly.
Like, I'm being tested. This is not right.
Yeah, they're spying on me. What they got going on? So yeah, awesome. Awesome. Well, I think we've about beat that one to death. And, I had another one on here really about kind of Fortinet updating a critical flaw in their management plane. But rather than getting into the technical description of that vulnerability, yeah, I've seen that come out around Fortinet. Like I think, I'm trying to think of a firewall vendor I haven't seen where there's been a vulnerability in the management plane, right? Like, I think, God, like Fortinet, and I'm pretty sure Palo have had phones in the nines that have been basically unauthed, either code execution or the ability to get in and to actually update the firewall config in that management plane. So I think, just broadly speaking, when we're thinking about these sorts of security vendors, you know, what sort of what sort of challenges are they facing? And are those challenges unique? Or is this just the same challenge that everybody building web applications faces? And I guess, what's the kind of implication for that with bug hunters? As a hunter, Harrison, like, if you see the opportunity to hack on a security vendor, are you taking any different approach? Or is it pretty much sticking to the same methodology? Now, I know this might be specific to you, but I mean, the people are dying to know. So
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. It's a good question. It's a good question. I haven't thought about that before. I don't think I take too much of a different approach. I think that especially when you're talking about like these systems that are designed to be external facing as well, which now I don't know if this one was. I don't remember if the admin plane was meant to be external facing, but a lot of times it needs to, because you'll have people accessing from all over the place. You put a VPN. Anyway, I'll get in a whole technical.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, with these things, a lot of times the default setting is just open to the internet because of the nature of remote work these days.
Yeah.
And all of them have the ability to go ahead and lock them down, but in a lot of cases they're not. From at least from what I've read, and just kind of doing a brief read up on that particular vuln, I think that was a control plane that was intended in a lot of cases to be open to the web.
Yeah, and
So,
I wonder how much of that is a false sense of security because people were thinking, it's a security vendor, so they're probably going above and beyond. Which I mean, I do think security vendors go above and beyond compared to some other industries,
yeah,
right? I actually think the healthcare industry is one of the ones that goes way more above and beyond because of HIPAA, right? There's
yeah,
so much damages that could come, financial damages. But anyway, I don't, from a methodology standpoint, I don't approach them any differently. I think the only thing that I can think of that I do differently with a security vendor is I'm very, they tend to be very open to questions and kind of, reaching out for more information or anything, right? Engaging with the bug bounty hunters. And that kind of goes back to what you were saying before, where like bug bounty hunters want to feel a part of that. I have certainly, and I do this with pretty much any program. I'll try and reach out if I have any questions or anything. But yeah, in my experience, if you're testing on a security thing, you're like, hey, here's who I am, here's what I'm doing, here's my account on here. I'm seeing this. I don't know if this is the type of thing you're looking for. So a lot of times with security vendors, it will start much more of a conversation. We'll build up more of a relationship and everything. I do think that they tend to take security a little more seriously because they're judged a little more harshly on it if something does go wrong. But the methodology itself pretty much stays the same.
yeah, stay standard. Cool, cool, cool. Yeah, it's I think that coming at this from the perspective of what does this mean to me, the hunter, aspiring practitioner, aspiring hunter, seasoned hunter, or I'm sure there'll be folks who are tuning in who are, just day-to-day security professionals who want in their spare time, like me. But I think that coming at it from that perspective can be really helpful. And the other thing too that I think can be really helpful, even in shaping the tone of your reports, is leading with empathy. I think that goes a long way to build bridges. Um, you know, I know that there are programs out there where those programs are being run by folks who've run bug bounty, who've been on the hunter side like you have. There are also quite a few programs out there where the program is under the pen testing arm. So it really, I think, behooves you to come in and come with the kind of empathy where you can't. You and I were talking about this the other day. You can't come in and be like, oh, look how much smarter I am than you. It's like, no, you probably hacked on this for 20 hours and this individual in 40 hours had to do about a bazillion things. So maybe like there's a good chance that this was missed, not because they couldn't find it, but because they didn't have time or they weren't given what they needed to go about testing it that way.
Yeah, 100%. The skills gap, I'm going to put air quotes, is an illusion that people who don't want to invest in security. I mean, that's minimizing it, right?
Mhm.
But yeah, no, there's most security teams have the skills they need to go and find the vulnerabilities. The problem is doing that in a way that coincides with the business needs at that certain time, especially when those business needs change, right? When the economy suddenly takes a big shift and now all of a sudden finances are completely different. How's that going to impact that? Start laying off. Yeah. I mean, there's so many things that can happen that are completely out of the security team's control. And yeah, if I see anybody that approaches it and kind of has that, oh my gosh, I can't believe, oh, that's so, you've never seen that piece of technology. I was like, okay, you don't have any experience. It's like it just seems to me like they're
Yeah, you
new
need
to
a
the whole
hug.
thing.
Like,
Well, that's a whole other conversation, but that's not my responsibility. I'll take the security side on. I'll do the education and
mhm,
everything.
mhm.
I ain't gonna be the one to give them a hug. They can find somebody else.
Yeah, that's what this year at RSA, free hugs for security practitioners. That's what we need to.
I tell you what, that booth would have a line out the door. You know, everybody would be crying
Yeah.
for 2 minutes holding their.
Yeah.
It's just so hard. But
Hey,
it is right.
maybe we found our next startup, you know?
We'll let somebody else take that one.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. We're just license the idea. Awesome. Well, I think final piece of news that I wanted to cover was um, HackerOne just released a blog, 104 hacking tools. So I don't even necessarily want to highlight like the content of the blog. My main question for you is, based off of your kind of experience and success, how often are you updating tooling? How often are you kind of looking at tooling? Or is that something that stays relatively static or I'll say context dependent based off of your target?
Yeah, yeah. Um, well, I obviously have my framework. So
Mhm.
like that's and that my framework is just a wrapper around several other tools. So like that's I think that's kind of its own thing. Like I'm always looking for new tools that solve new problems.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm necessarily, once you get your methodology set and everything, I do get locked into tools, which is
Yeah.
probably not good. Burp Suite's a great example, right?
Mhm.
I've paid for a Burp Pro account now for probably close to 10 years. I mean, I don't know how
Yeah.
long it's been. Um, when people talk about Kaido, like Kaido, it's great. It's a great tool. I've used it. It looks great. I'm just locked into Burp Suite.
Yeah,
It's just,
I can see it in your hunting sessions. You're like just you're locked in, and the way that you use burp and pivot is something that it's got me rethinking my use of Kaido because I delved into the Kaido world last year when I heard about it, and I've been able to achieve a lot of the functionality I'd like to, but and I'll get into more of this on my channel, but my testing journey and where I am is, I think that I've got the knowledge base. It's just a question of iterating and getting faster and kind of making these techniques for me less intellectually taxing so that what might take me 2 hours to find because I just don't have quite the experience you do, you could find in 5 minutes. And a lot of that we've talked about is if you want to learn a vulnerability or vulnerability class, you there's a pretty good rhythm for this, which is one, you learn how to do it manually, you learn how to find variants. Two, you build a tool to do it for you or try to script it because that forces you to learn it. And that it sounds like that informs your approach to tooling as well. When you're looking at tools, do you ever get into sort of like how they work or what's under the hood of the code?
oh yeah, that's probably the most value that I get from it. So like I'm always looking for
Mm,
new tools that automate something that's not already automated,
yeah.
or like a new attack technique, anything else. But yeah, I mean, I love taking the tools and stripping them down and like figuring out how they work, figuring out like if I've got an idea of how to automate it, well, what
Mhm.
features, what things did they do that I didn't think about, right, to solve additional
Yeah.
problems.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, no, I do, it just depends. You're always kind of weighing the effort it would take to automate something. Like if there's a learning advantage, just like you're saying on top of it, I'm always going to go and automate it. If we're talking about some type of an exploit that I don't know, if there's a learning capacity, I want to go build it out myself. And then I'll go look at all the other tools, see how they do it. And I'll, bippity boppity, your code is now my property, as John Hammond would say. Go steal that out there and I'll put that feature in my thing too. So
Actually,
yeah.
you did that with a tool, didn't you? You found a tool that had basically been kind of orphaned and you branched it off. Was it Cloudy Noom or something along those lines for your framework?
Yeah, Cloudy Num. Yeah, I've been using Cloudy Num for a while, and it's so it's always been great. If anybody doesn't know, it's for brute forcing cloud assets, right? You can give it all these different things. But yeah, I went there as I was just building my framework, and there was a message at the top of the README that said this is no longer being actively maintained. We recommend you use Nuclei, right, from Project Discovery. I'm sure most people are familiar with that. Which like obviously Nuclei is great, but for me, I don't know. I like the way that Cloudy Num works. Is just this isolated script that you can go in. And I also noticed when I was looking through the code that I think it was very clear to me that the developer that built it was very heavy on Azure experience and possibly, not as experienced with AWS, which AWS that's
Yeah.
been most of my career.
I remember you saying
Um,
that. Yeah.
yeah. So I cloned it off or forked it rather. I'm maintaining that fork now. It's built into my framework, everything else. But I also built in a lot of like updated all the AWS checks. Like it started out, it only did 2 or 3 AWS checks. Now it
Yeah.
does about 25 different ones. It'll find you SageMaker notebooks that are SageMaker notebooks, batch jobs, training jobs,
Yeah. Yeah.
uh, all this stuff. Yeah, I list off a bunch of different things, but
Yeah.
API gateways, Kaido, or I mean, not Kaido, Cognito, all that stuff.
Yeah. It's like that can be huge. And you talk about this a lot, and it's something that it's really informed what I look for, when I'm on programs, which is what you want to look for, a really, really strong signal when you're looking for vectors to create a test plan around, or when you're creating that stride threat model, is you want to look for any overlap. So does the application call native cloud services so that it can employ those functionality? Because oftentimes a developer will learn that cloud service well enough to invoke it, but not necessarily learn the full measure of what it can do. So if that cloud service, if it's got some, if it takes a JSON payload and has some, deprecated XML parser that will still get parsed on the back end, if you throw that into the JSON payload, then the developer probably didn't know that, and that's, I'm mixing two examples here, but it's there's a lot of functionality within kind of cloud services that a lot of times the folks being asked to work on those cloud services just aren't aware of,
Yep.
So
Oh yeah, and I'll flip it around for you too. There's a lot of cloud services that are really under the hood are pieces of an application. They're all HTTP based. API gateway is a fantastic example of that. And this is the areas where cloud infrastructure and custom code come together are the places where you're going to find a lot of vulnerabilities for the exact reason that you're talking about, right? The cloud infrastructure people, the DevOps people, they're not as familiar with the way that an application works, or at least, a good portion of them are. This has been my experience, right? So you go talk to the developer, say, I think we have an issue here. Oh, I'm not really sure how that works. That's the cloud team. You go talk to the cloud team, and the cloud team is like, well, that's all HTTP based. You got to go back. I'm like, all right, well, I guess I got to learn it,
Yeah. I mean,
So, yeah.
you're bringing but you're also driving home the point, and it's going right back to what we were talking about, which is just really around this empathy for the practitioner, because you're very clearly speaking from experience here, going back and forth between two different teams who are saying, in essence, either that's not my chair, not my problem, or that's not my job. One of the two things. And I think that can kind of get into the mismatched incentives, and really why, it can be very, very helpful to have these programs that incentivize external researchers to find bugs, because then when they're reported from the outside, there's just sometimes a level of validation that comes in that it can be hard to voice from the inside,
I want to really highlight that, what
Yeah.
you just said, because that's, yeah. It's really amazing how much I've seen that. Like the difference in the way an internal vulnerability is handled. Like, so, oh, we were testing, we found that, compared to somebody from just a external pen test. The way that it is, yeah, there is a lot of times, and this is why in application security, product security, if you're working on as a practitioner, your soft skills are so important. Your ability to be able to sell the vulnerability, to articulate the risk very clearly. Its soft skills are so much more important than I think people realize. But yeah, you end up in a conversation, multiple different meetings when it comes from the inside. We got to talk, oh, is this something we need to, really need to fix? And you bring something from an external pen test, and a lot of times it's treated completely differently, even though the people that are finding it internal, sometimes are more skilled,
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny. It's like a prophet's without honor in his hometown, or only without honor in his hometown, I think, as the old proverb goes. But, and the funny thing is, this happens all across the business. Like, we used to work together in a different lifetime, as sales engineers. And I remember there was a customer I was working with, and I explained to them how something worked and why it worked. Probably, geez, it must have been like, I think I said it probably 6 times. And then one of our colleagues came on, and she explained the same thing that I explained, and frankly, didn't say it a whole lot different, and they got it. And it was just an aha moment, and sometimes it takes changing up that pressure. Sometimes it takes, kind of bringing a different voice to the conversation to say the same thing, to really kind of get that leadership buy-in. I know that third-party validation is huge when it comes to building a business case. And that's a lot of the value, I think, that, that hopefully myself and that the rest of the community can bring to a lot of the programs that we're working on.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, I think that's a good wrap on the bug bounty hunters' perspective on what's going on in the news. So I think if it's all right, we'll take a quick break and then we'll just jump over into what you've been up to. Sound good to you?
Yeah, sounds good.
What you been up to?
Uh, a lot.
So I guess let's what so I am excited to hear about obviously what you're doing with the channel. And I'm really excited to hear about, what you got going on for members, and then you've got a differentiated thing for partners I was able to join the other day.
Yeah.
That was pretty exciting too. But before we get into that piece, like outside of those two things, I guess what would you want the community to know that you're working on? Sort of like what kind of back office stuff, or what is there any vision that you have that you're kind of starting to realize that might be, I don't know, that me as somebody who just watches your channel and takes in all the content and learns everything I can, that I might be missing? Like, what's going on that side of things?
Yeah. Well, so it's been, I think this Saturday, it'll be 5 weeks since I did the initial announcement, is really
Mhm.
saying that I'm, going to do YouTube and company bug bounty hunting, everything. And so,
Mhm.
um, yeah, I guess behind the scenes, there's a lot of stuff that happens behind the scenes as far as like just general admin stuff that I've been building out, right? It's like
Yeah.
it's the stuff that you don't realize takes so much time. Patreon.
Mhm.
I had never really, I wasn't familiar with Patreon. I had to do,
Yeah.
took me a couple hours to really learn the platform, get everything built out. Yeah, I mean, it's just like that with everything. Everything
Mhm.
just there's all these little steps and little things that you have to get set up to take time. So I think that's a lot of what people aren't seeing as far as kind of what's happening up until this point.
Yeah.
I am having, so I guess one thing, and this, so I don't know if you know this or not. Have you been watching the Partners channel?
I think so.
Were you watching it yesterday? Did you see my
No.
announcement yesterday? Perfect.
No. Okay,
I
cool.
was hoping you didn't. And I put a message in the yeah. I was
Yeah.
hoping you didn't so that we can get your reaction live on
All
here.
right.
So and this is going to come out later. So but this has been announced at this time. It's been
Mhm.
announced to all my members.
Okay.
And actually this evening I'm going to announce this in the Discord channel, and then I'm going to make like a larger announcement tomorrow as part of the live stream and everything else. So and this kind of goes back to where you're talking about the larger vision.
Yeah.
On Saturday, February 21st,
Hmm.
I'm going to be holding my first, basically, what I'm calling the Bug Bounty Launchpad. It is a 1 day, 9 hour live intensive workshop that is designed to give you all the tools you need to start bug bounty hunting and a very clear roadmap for how you can continue learning and how you can continue to grow.
That's amazing.
I've been working on this for the content and everything for a while. Obviously I've had this vision even when I, had my
Yeah.
thing there. So, like we're going to do the first one on, like I said, February 21st, starts at
Mhm.
9 a.m. It's going to end at 6 a.m. There are two open Q&A sessions, one at lunch. So we're going to take an hour long lunch. If you want to sit back, ask me any questions, happy to do that. And then one from 5 to 6 at the end, sit there, answer any questions. We can hang out a little longer if we need to,
Oh,
but, I really see that. First of all, I'll say this. Um, I am starting to realize through trial and error and kind of seeing different things
yeah.
that the community is very hungry for live trainings,
Yeah.
live experiences, live interactions. Going back to where you mentioned the partners, we did the live hunting session on Monday,
Mhm.
where it was just kind of recorded on a Google Meet as opposed to a live stream. I was able to be
Right.
much more candid. We were able to actually start hunting,
Mhm.
really hunting, right? I mean, we found a open redirect in like 20 minutes.
Yeah. If
Just in
that.
there, there was one that
Yeah.
like nobody even thought would work.
It was amazing. You're like, well, that shouldn't work. Like, just right out
Yeah.
the gate, you're like, well, that was easy. So,
Yeah, I was like, no way, it's gonna be that easy. But yeah, so I that's what I'm really going to lean into. Again, the live streams as well. The live streams, I'm getting a ton of engagement and everything there, which is phenomenal. During the streams, they're doing great on YouTube as well. So, I mean, that's a lot of what I'm doing is kind of trying to figure out what people want, what people don't. But these, these live trainings. So I'm starting with 1 days, and I'm doing soft launches. So I'm limiting this to 50 tickets. I
mhm.
can tell you I have only announced it to like I said, the my YouTube members, the people that are
Yeah.
paying so far. And I think we're already down to 40 tickets in less than 24 hours. So I don't know if there's going to be any left by the time this comes out, to be honest. If there are, I'll include a link. You can go see it there.
Yeah.
But I'm going to continue doing more of those. And that, I could see a world where we have, one or two of those a week for
Yeah.
blocks of time. And then long term, I see a lot of opportunity for live in-person trainings.
Yeah.
And this is what I'm personally most excited about. I
Mhm.
want to go to Barcelona
Yeah.
and hold a live training there. I want to go to, Singapore and
Mhm.
hold a live training there. And, I love travel. Like, you know what I mean? I'm
Oh, yeah.
pretty, if I can figure out a way to pay for a vacation, go see all these beautiful countries and meet all these beautiful people and everything, and, go do a training. It's like
Yeah.
a stand-up comedian, right? Stand-up comedian goes on vacation. They'll do a
Exactly.
show right at the beginning or the end, pays for the whole vacation.
Yeah. Yeah. No, this is awesome. I think this is something that I know that like so I am hearing the announcement fresh. I know that there's a lot of excitement around this type of interaction. And you're getting with this, even live virtual and the stuff you're doing for partners right now, you're getting at solving a problem that I think for a lot of folks who might have the skills to work really hard and take the leap into bug bounty or are trying to get started pen testing, it's a problem for them because if they're like me, then they're motivated and energized by that person to person interaction.
Yeah.
And this can be like, hunting can, you just hold up in your office. Like I've made it a discipline this year that I get up and hack for an hour and a half or 2 hours before work every morning, and I've been successful at it so far. But part of what drives my ability to do that is knowing that I'm going to have a lot of in-person or even virtual in-person interaction with work. And then there's the community aspect that you're providing, because those folks, like the other folks on the journey, it can be so helpful to give yourself a baseline of where you are when you're in a community. If you
Yeah.
don't have the other people who are there asking questions and hunting at the same time and approaching the target differently, it can be very, very difficult. And you and I were talking about this the other day. Like, when am I ready to start hunting? Which is a great question. And I started off the year thinking I needed to really kind of beef up my learning. And a week and a half into it, I realized I know enough to start. And the best way I'm going to learn is just follow a methodology, use Stride, like we talked about, create a test plan, and then be disciplined about testing the app. And when I run into something I need to test and I don't know how to do it, I go to generative AI, I go to hacktricks, .wiki, and basically just look through the material I already have and use the LLM to help coach me. But I also prime it saying, here are the sources I need you to look at, because this is what we're going off of. So you don't give me that basic stuff. But like this piece of being able to get that interaction. And the other thing too is what I really like about this is like, all right, somebody like me who's got a full-time job who wants to up level, I can take a day and devote the time and the money to coming to a session like that. And I know it's going to give me probably as much value as a month of getting up and hacking for 2 hours at a time, because I'm able to get down and do, it's funny when you think about this on like in cybersecurity, it would almost be like surge testing versus, just kind of that regular ongoing security hygiene. So getting in that surge, learning a whole bunch, having the communal experience, and creating those sort of deeper connections, I think that's the value that people might miss out of it if they just see sort of like, hey, this is just like another training or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah. No, you're so right. That having another person that you can just talk to and just get like that parity check, just
Yeah.
like ask, hey, I'm doing this. Does that like, yeah. And I mean, does it make sense? Would you do this? Everything else, it's, and that's what I really love about, what I'm seeing the Discord grow into,
Mhm.
and there's a lot of really great people that have been on that Discord since, when I first I guess a month ago, that are contributing to this. But it really has become a welcoming space for beginners and for people to ask questions and not, I mean, there's so many different bug bounty hunting environments like hacker, in environments and communities that don't treat people very nicely when they come in and ask a question. Or, again, it's the same type of thing we were talking about, like they feel with practitioners. Oh my gosh, can't believe you know that. No, I mean, look, technology is, nobody knows everything about technology. Nobody on the planet. I don't care if they're making $10 million from OpenAI or whatever right now. It's an incredibly wide net. There's nobody on the planet that knows everything, that has experienced everything. And honestly, if you know everything about the stuff that, happened a while ago, I mean, how much does it apply compared to, like, if especially right now where everything is changing, like it's almost better to just be heads up and see where everything is going than to worry about catching up and learning everything.
That's, and that's the thing. Like, I think the only thing you miss with that is kind of, there's an aspect to learning where basically, like, when learning speeds up, when the game slows down for most people, it's because they've learned to understand established patterns, and they can chunk the items they need to learn and connect them to old things. So when you're first getting started, it feels like a whole volume of things you need to learn. This guy was actually called out on the critical thinking podcast. And my experience with critical thinking is they are not the kind of folks who want to make you feel dumb. Their audience is full-time hunters who are already established and kind of in the world at the peak of their game. Their goal is to give, like, those full-time hunters a really advanced sort of tip or trick or technique, like where you're looking at basically like the timing on a response to brute force, an entire password or something. So like, it's kind of crazy, but they've just got a different audience. But it is filling, I think, a lot of the same void. And I think the two complement each other really nicely, where, you're coming in and you're providing that sort of environment that is just critical for folks to learn. And as somebody who's participating as a student, of rs0n Live, like, I can tell you that I've already seen more growth in the last, like, 2 weeks than I probably did all of last year. And it's because I didn't have the community aspect to help me know what I knew, and to kind of encourage me to do what I wanted to do. And, like, guess I didn't make it clear from the get-go, but, like, I'm a learner, I'm a follower. And so, I'm getting, like, access to interview you about this. I figured this discussion is something everybody else wants to hear, but, like, where I am on my journey is, like, I am getting to a point where I'm confident in my testing methodology, and I know that it's going to yield bugs if I'm disciplined and I stick to it and I don't chase rabbit trails. And I take something, I learn it, right over there, and apply it across a bunch of programs. Like that. That's just what it comes down to. It's one of those things where it's not hard, but the community that you're building has been the missing ingredient for me. And so I think if anybody out there is watching this and they've tried and failed to get going in this, and they just don't feel like, I'm never going to report a bug and, like, get paid on it. It's like, no, it's not true. Like, I think that what you're missing is you're missing some aspect to support your learning and to support your journey. So these surge in person sessions. So I guess a couple questions just so folks, because, like, I know there's folks who will probably watch this and say, I don't know if I'm ready for that. Like, who is the intended audience for this first live training you're doing?
Yeah, that's a great question. And kind of going back to what you're talking about with the critical thinking podcast and everything, you're exactly right that at least my goal was to kind of complement that. So where I see myself in the larger ecosystem of the bug bounty, education, content, or whatever you want to call them, I want to be the entry point. I want to build things for beginners to get you to that point where you're confident, and then you can graduate to the critical thinking podcast. You can graduate to Jason Haddock's. You can graduate to Nahamsek, right? Like, I want to be able to provide the methodologies, the guideposts and everything for that part of the journey where it feels like you're just getting on a boat and going into the open ocean. You have no idea where to go or no idea, where to go with it there. So with that in mind, obviously, there is some foundational knowledge that needs to be there with technology, web applications. You need to understand how the basic ways that a HTTP works, web browser works, things like that. but you don't really need to have any knowledge of bug bounties in and of itself. Like we're going to start from scratch and go in. Like literally the first thing on there, the first thing on the first section is what are bug bounties and why do companies have them?
Mhm.
Like that's right. So like you don't need to have any experience with bug bounties. If you have been a developer, a
Mhm.
web developer, anything, something like that, where you understand the technology, but you want to learn the offensive side,
Yeah.
phenomenal. You know, if you're somebody that's been getting into bug bounties, maybe you submitted a couple reports or anything, that's like a great person to do it. If you're somebody who has found a way to start getting valid reports, everything, but it's with a couple very specific, narrow techniques, right? You found some tricks and everything to do that, but you want to build a full comprehensive, which by the way, there's nothing wrong with that. I'm not saying, not saying that.
There,
Um,
there's a hacker that critical thinking highlighted, and his whole shtick is I'm not a good hacker, but I make a full-time living off bug bounty because wait for it, I just do IDOR.
I mean, that's why I always say IDORs and access controls to start out. Yeah, you can
Yeah.
absolutely, but that's why I
Yeah.
always push people in that direction.
Yeah.
But yeah, so, as long as you have a basic understanding of the way that web applications, work, communicate in a browser, um, you have the ability, ideally everybody that's coming there does have my framework working, and
Mhm.
that's something that I'm going to be communicating with everybody that's purchased a ticket, helping them get that set up. Because what we're going to do is, for anybody who hasn't used my framework, you can import data that has been recorded there, and it will automatically populate it with all your Recon data. So in the beginning, one of the first things you'll do in the course is I'm going to provide Recon data for 4 different programs, one
Mhm.
on each of what I would think are the major platforms, right? So HackerOne, BugCrowd, Integrity, and Yes We Hack. And then you'll essentially have based on which platform you want to use, and I'll explain the differences between them if you're not familiar.
Mhm.
You can select that, you'll pull it down, and then as we go through, I'm going to go through my full Recon methodology, my full methodology for automated testing. And one of the really cool things about this too, and I'm really glad I structured it this way. I wasn't initially going to do it, and I actually redid everything like
Yeah.
a couple days ago because I had this idea. But so as we go through manual and automated testing, it's actually the other way around. There's a lot more manual, but as we go through those, instead of just teaching the techniques and the methodologies, they're taught through very specific hunting strategies.
Mhm.
So we start with a hunting strategy, then we teach the methodology to do that strategy, and it breaks down into these more individual components. And then within there, you get to see, okay, with this strategy, we're also going to learn about IDORs and access controls and this and that because it works best in this strategy. So not only are you going to understand the types of attacks that you can do, you're also going to understand where they fit into this. And again, these strategies are something that I've noticed I think a lot of people don't talk about. Like
Yeah.
there's so many different ways to approach bug bounty hunting. Like I said, you can just focus on one thing. I'm
Yeah.
just focusing on IDORs. And then you go out and you find every program that's good for IDORs, and you go and you build your methodology around there. You can, like one of the things that we'll teach is what I call gotta go fast. I don't know where that came from, but it's always just been stuck in my head as one.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
right, I teach you how to monitor for when new programs are released, to monitor when new domains are identified through your Recon, so that you can like go in and test it before anybody else does.
Mhm.
How do I find new mechanisms in an application that have maybe just been built out? How do we discover beta features? How do we determine what feature flags are and turn on new features for ourselves that maybe other people can't get, and we can test them first, right? So I think like teaching the attack techniques within the context of the hunting strategy and giving a very clear roadmap to do that, I'm hoping is going to change the way that people approach it, and give them. I'm hoping it'll make it easier to find your first bug. It's
Yeah.
really I want to collapse it down to that. I think that this teaching it in this way is going to make it much more accessible to know exactly what you need to do to find your first bug. And those are the strategies I'm teaching. I'm not teaching the one where you're going to be hunting for a year to try to get your research thing figured
Right.
out. Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Beginners don't need that.
No.
Critical thinking, they can handle that.
Yeah, exactly. If you want to under like dig into the I guess minutia of DOM purify and waste a sneak and XSS payload through that, critical thinking will have you covered. If you're with me and you reported a bug or you haven't, but you want to get that crit, you want to get that high, you want to just improve your overall journey, and you're just not in a place yet where you can go hack on your home program, so to speak. If you don't even have a home program and find a crit, something like that, it sounds like this is a really, really kind of perfect, and that's the strategy piece is something you're hitting on because the two game changers for me this year already have been the infrastructure and the community that you've built out and just kind of being able to participate there. And the other game changer's been instead of trying to learn how to hunt for IDOR or to hunt for specific vuln classes, I'm working it backwards and I want to understand, hey, what strategies can I take for account takeover? Because I want to become an expert in account takeover.
Yeah.
And what that gives me is it's given me a lot of different test plans to try out. And I have started on probably too hard of a program where it's an application where there's a single role in it. And they have done a really good job with separating out authentication management from authorization management from session management. Uh, every time I go through and look for something, I'm like, wow, man, they're punching above their weight with the kind of secure development they're doing, just in terms of what I would anticipate. Not even finding a vuln, just finding a pointer. Like you always talk about, where it's like, oh, well, you know, it does accept, a password reset token that's like older, or I can sneak in another email address in the password reset flow, or just those sorts of things. And it's just like all of these. I mean, even to the point where it's like they went to invalidate, like I already had an invalidated session, but it didn't demonstrate that to me in the GUI. Like in the interface in the browser, I went to reset my password and it acted like I had done it right. When you look at the proxy, I was getting a 403, but they don't even expose that. So it's just like,
Oh, yeah.
yeah, it's great. So it's like those sorts of kind of avenues to take for testing and going at it with a strategy. I think that the strategy component that will help inform everything down the line from the test plan you create all the way down to the report writing.
Yeah. Yeah. And what's interesting is I hadn't thought about that too much until there was one YouTube comment that I got on in the client side injections video when I kept saying over and over again, don't choose your program and then and then do the vulnerabilities like a pen test. Choose your vulnerability first, do that. And somebody, very accurately said, hey, I saw you say the exact opposite in the IDOR and access controls video, where you say go pick a company, feel like you've done that, and then go through and do that. Although there we were picking IDORs and access controls,
Yeah.
but and yeah, I explained in the comment as well, and I think I mentioned this in another video too. But
Yeah.
um, you know, I mean, it was essentially that, right? Like I broke it down and said, well, these are actually two, and these are both going to be covered in my launchpad course. There's many different strategies, and you take a different approach there. So what you're identifying is there's two different strategies. One of those would be the SaaS deep dive, and that's going to be the IDOS and access controls, where you pretend that you've been hired by the company, you learn everything about it, you test on it every day, you learn their patterns, etc. Whereas this other one is more of like an education and research strategy, where you're focusing in on this one vulnerability or vulnerability class typically. And then so what you want to do is see it in as many different environments as possible, test it with different types of security controls, test it on different technology frameworks. And so there you're going to reach out and do it. So I just kind of had this light bulb came off where I said, oh, I think people maybe just don't. It's something that over time
Yeah.
you realize naturally, but I don't know if anybody's really sat down and articulated it for people. So hopefully well.
Yeah, and that's it's one of those things where it's like when you watch a video on YouTube about how to do something, a lot of times the presenter has a level of expertise that there's things that implied or they forgot they learned, and I think that's what's really helpful with the community you've built is a lot of the folks are so fresh that they are asking questions that you sometimes, that I forget that I had to learn, or that other folks who, and I'm not that much further along than them, but it's just that kind of self-awareness can be very, very helpful. And when you are communicating to a community and they have a very, very easy path for feedback, it just really helps, I think, with the overall content. It helps you drive what's really going to make a difference. So this is so exciting. So all right.
Yeah,
So
I just want to
basically,
say real
yeah.
quick. I just want to say real quick. Anybody that's watching this, if you are struggling with self-awareness, make a YouTube channel and look through the comments. You're gonna know what people think about you. I promise.
Oh, that's got to be an after hours episode where we read mean comments and nice comments.
Yes.
Gotta be.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah. I've got some. Yeah.
Hey,
version
troll's
one
gonna
of the
troll.
framework. Whew, there was
Haters gonna hate.
good.
So,
Yeah,
but
exactly.
so
Yeah.
one thing I do want to call out, man, you've described your framework a little bit. We've talked about it a bunch. I'm what I'll plan to do, or what we can plan to do, is link a video where you go through and demo your framework so folks can really understand what it is, because that was a game changer as well for me, being able to, basically get the framework going at the beginning of the workday, or before I go to bed. And that way, when I'm done with work or the next morning, I've got a bunch of recon that I can go through that you've helped and prioritize. I love the updates, the ability to go in and take that and then put that into kind of a sort of stride framework and even have notes in there. I mean, it really is helping to bridge the gap from recon to testing, which is where a lot of people get stuck.
That's great. Yeah, yeah. So and talking about like the updates to the framework too. That's another. I've been able to do two pretty major updates since the beta launch at DEF CON, and we'll have two different videos now that we can link in there, because one is the initial walkthrough, which was essentially the digital version of my talk at DEF CON,
Yep.
and then the second one I recorded and released this week. I think it was this week or early this week. Walking through all those new changes and how it changes everything. Like, right, like one of the biggest changes in the most recent release is that now, and this was tedious. I'm going to be honest with you. This took about a day and a half, and it was not a fun day and a half.
Yeah.
The pretty much every file has been refactored so that it will work correctly from an external IP address. And I put an Nginx reverse proxy on a container in there so it'll route everything back correctly. So now if you want to host it on like a virtual private server, or you want to access it from an external IP address, it will now support that. That was by far the most requests that I got. So yeah, that's the second video will show how to access it accurately, how to get that set up, all the new, the stride threat modeling feature that clearly, based on that whiteboard over there, you've been using a little bit. And yeah.
I have, and it's earned me some cool points when I've been talking to other folks in InfoSec. So,
I think that only earns you cool points in InfoSec, and I think those cool points are isolated to InfoSec, and they do not translate to other communities. But
maybe cool points is the wrong word. I mean, if anything, I've told people before, it's like, hacking in the movies is you're just banging on a keyboard and then all of a sudden you're in. Hacking in real life is more like doing complicated math problems, and it involves acronyms, and who doesn't love a good acronym? So,
yeah, for sure. For sure.
All right. So I want to get to what we got coming up, but only other things to touch on in terms of what you've been up to. You mentioned we had a partner meetup that was not a live stream, which kind of provides a little bit more flexibility because it's more like a co-hunting session or a collaborative hunting session. Are you planning to do more of those with the partner segment of the community?
Yeah, that's going to become a core part of what I'm doing moving forward. I mean, and what was great was that idea came from the partners that were signed up as a member. So how that came about is I went to the partners once, I kind of had the basics and everything set up and said, hey, so the partner level is very similar to the the level down there. So I want to find ways to show or to give more value to the individuals that are investing the most into the community.
Yeah.
And kind of gave out a few different options. And this was by far, everybody's like, oh yeah, I'd love to do like a live hunting session where it's, we can actually go into the exploits and stuff.
Yeah.
So what it really is it's what I used to do with my application security team, along with the developers when I, led the application security team at Flowcast, which was, where I ran the HackerOne program and everything too.
Yeah.
But it was wildly successful. So what we would do is every Wednesday we had like an hour and a half, 2 hours, something like that blocked off, where I would be the hands-on keyboard sharing my screen out, and we would hack our application. And anybody that had free time from the security team would come in and join. Some people would have their own thing set up and they would be testing at the same time. Some people would be just like calling out ideas and I would handle it myself. Some people just sat back and watched and learned. But it's a very similar thing. And then we also did that. I would bring the developers with that too. And that was where like, it was incredible when we did that.
Yeah.
Cause they,
that. Like that sounded like it really was pretty unreal, but yeah.
Yeah. Well, and we kind of had a little bit like that on this one because we were lucky enough. One of the partners is actually a triager at Integrity and was actually the one who would be triaging any reports that we submitted to this exact program. And so yeah, having them on there was incredible because we were able to get some insight into what types of things they're looking for, what types of
Yeah.
things they're not. Obviously they can't share what's actually being found or anything, but yeah, I
Right.
mean, just kind of having that feedback and everything is great. But yeah, so I mean, that's what it's modeled on. I mean, I thought it went fantastic.
I did
First
too.
of all, we had yeah, no, it was great to have you there too, and a lot of people were very vocal. It was a lot of a lot of questions, a lot of conversation and stuff that I thought was very productive.
Mhm.
A lot of people signed up to be a partner member as well because of
Yeah.
that, which I mean, it's that was it was great. So 100%, I mean, I'm going to try to do one at least like every couple weeks.
Yeah.
I kind of right now it's really hard to anticipate what cadence everything is going to land on because there's so many different things happening at once.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, that's going to happen again. And I had a freaking blast, man. Like seriously, like it's just ridiculous that this is my job now. I mean, it was just so much fun.
That's the thing is like, people like we both had jobs where we were in meetings for 8 hours a day, right?
Yep. Yep.
And it's funny because like some days when you're talking to the right people, it's not like you're in a meeting. It's just like you're having a conversation like this. And that felt like we were all in a virtual room just hacking on something together, having a good time.
Yep.
It felt like way back in the day when you were my neighbor above me, and Wednesday nights we would get together and just hack on something till, either we got tired or you found something. So like
Exactly.
I loved that aspect of it. This is actually perfect because this transitions nicely into kind of what's coming down the pipe, like what you got coming. So obviously those partner live sessions are going to be something we got coming.
Yep.
You're going to continue to do the live streaming as well. And does that go out to just members, or is that live stream for anybody?
That's anybody. Yeah. So
Anybody.
I do public
Okay.
live streams. It'll go through Twitch and YouTube. I'm doing another one tomorrow, but obviously we're recording this early. So by the time this comes out, it'll already happen. Yeah. So the live streams are, it's definitely, I come in there with a plan and like a topic I want to talk about. And, it's harder to get into the deep exploiting because if I show a real vulnerability, I might go to jail and I don't particularly want to go to jail.
Yeah,
So,
we're trying to
yeah,
avoid
yeah. If at all possible. Yeah, and I was talking this the other day too, but like you and I have both heard, like we joke about it, but you and I have both heard some horror stories.
that.
So it's like it's a joke, but it's also like, hey, you gotta, yeah, it's serious as well if you cross the
Yeah.
wrong person.
It
So,
really, I mean, like, we've heard horror stories of like pen testers who work for major multinational corporations spending 2 weeks in jail because the company didn't come to rescue them in time. And without us even having corporate coverage, like that's
yep.
the kind of risk you just can't take. So it makes perfect sense. But it's such an invaluable part to the community. I think that, it's super helpful that you're still continuing to bring that in. So got the
Yep.
live streams coming down. Are there any videos you're working on you want to highlight that'll be coming down the pipe, or are you focused more on live right now?
Yeah, there are definitely some video. So yeah, I've got a ton of video ideas. I guess it's always like balancing exactly
Yeah.
where I want to do.
Mhm.
Um, So the major public videos
Mhm.
that I'm planning to do are the ones that are coming up. And I did talk with the partners and get some insight into like what topics they wanted me to cover. Because again, that's another big value of that tier there. But
Yeah.
um, I've been doing kind of the shorter things, right? I did the answer questions. I've done a few of the reports and everything. So I'm going to start getting back to the long form public videos,
Yeah.
bug bounty hunting for X, like an attack class. So um, AI is going to be the next big one. That was by far the one that people want to talk about. And again, this is also going to be on the live stream.
Mhm.
Not this drives me crazy. We're not just looking at prompt injection. I don't. People seem to think that AI, like bug bounty hunting, you're just doing prompt injections. All people. No, we're going to look at all the other things. We're going to look at how, like I said, we can test the external infrastructure. We're going to talk about how devastating it would be if a company that has, and we can find companies that has an automated machine learning pipeline to build out these models and everything, how
Yeah.
devastating it is if we can get into the S3 bucket that's storing the attestation files for those models. A lot of people don't realize that there's so much stuff on the back end. If they lose those files, it's a compliance nightmare, right? So we're going to talk about that. We're
Right.
going to talk about RAG systems, all that stuff. So yeah, AI, bug bounty hunting for cloud infrastructure. So I've got a whole list of ones there that I'm going to do. And then the other thing that I'm really excited about, we're going to start branching into what I call bug bounty adjacent
Yeah.
topics. you know. And one probably the next big public video I'll do is going to be essentially a roadmap in 2026
Hmm.
to use bug bounty hunting and building your own open source tools and networking and building your soft skills and this and that.
Yeah.
How you can essentially a roadmap to building a career in application security with spending as little money as possible.
Yep.
You know, I'm not going to,
Yeah.
don't go get this degree, don't go get this certification, anything like that. But here, use bug bounties. Here's how you can do it to earn money while you're learning. Here's
Yeah.
how you can build your resume with it. You know, these automated tools that you're building. Yeah, all that type of stuff, right? Networking,
Yeah.
soft skills, like we talked about, you know, free resources that are online, like the Black Swan group to talk about how you can change the way that your language is to create these win-win scenarios within it, all that
Mhm.
type of stuff. So
Yeah.
that's what I'm really excited about too. That's also going to, when we're talking about these 1 day trainings, kind of moving these live trainings, I'm going to be building out things like that as well. So yeah, I mean, I'm just kind of brained up and sorry. I got,
No,
yeah,
no. I mean, this is what folks want to know, because like this is what's really informing your roadmap, you know. And the thing is like this YouTube channel where folks are watching this. Comments are a great way to give feedback, but that's generally surface level feedback. If you get into the community, get into the Discord, I think that's where your voice can really be heard. And the community is in large part driving a lot of where your priorities are going. I mean, you know, if you want to go all in, it's not, hey, let me learn a bunch of stuff and then show up in the community. It's the other way around. Let me show up in the community. They're not going to be mean to me because I'm a noob, because we all started somewhere. They're going to help accelerate my learning journey. And that's something that I'm sure you and I will have more to share about coming down the future. But I've got some plans to really share my learning journey, but then also to look at building some content to support the learning journeys others are taking, or that really just takes, hey, what is Harrison talking about this week? All right, cool. Well, in that case, let's have some primer questions. So if we're talking about attacking an LLM, here's a great Portswigger article you can go, read. And if you don't have time to read it, here are the 5 lines that you want to pull out of it to get read 20% of it, get 80% of the knowledge base. It'll prime you, so what Harrison's saying will really sink in, because you'll be connecting it to what you've already been exposed to. Because I think a lot of people think that learning is just consuming. Learning's not consuming. Learning is learn, test, rest, test,
yeah,
teach. Learn, test, rest, test, teach
yeah.
it. And so if you can get into that kind of a mindset, you're going to have a lot more success with any of the content you're interacting with. And so it's the kind of thing where I think that as the community develops, as you continue to develop the content that you're producing, I think that there will be a lot of folks out there who are successful with it, but there'll be, I think, a subset of the community that just needs a little bit of scaffolding to help get them where, because it's like, I love your 4 hour, like, live stream recon videos, but I got an hour and a half in the morning before work that I can learn, so like,
It's a lot. It's
right,
definitely a
right. But I
lot.
mean, but that's the whole point, is it is a lot. But the thing is, there's ways to get the value out of that. For some folks, it means splitting it into 4 different learning sessions. For other folks, it means, hey, if I watch this 20-minute segment and then I go read this article and then I jump into this members only video, that can be my learning path for the week. And I'll have a much better understanding of how to go from recon to idle, or recon to, attacking an LLM, or what have you. So
Yeah, yeah.
super, super exciting about like what's coming down the pipe. I know for folks who are watching, we might not have offered up some concrete things, but if you're like me, you're pumped just off of the vision of what's going to be coming down the pipe.
Well, let me give you one concrete too, because I want to talk about. We talked about the public things. I want to
Yeah,
talk about a members only video that I've been working on, and I'm still kind of doing my own, like getting the methodology fully built out. But
yeah,
something that I have not seen is a really clear step-by-step methodology to test for. I guess I don't know exactly how you call it. Test for data leaks that come as a result of not verifying deep links in mobile applications, and testing that on mobile applications that don't actually give you an Android APK. They just point you to the Play Store. So for the members, something that I've been working, and again, it's going to take me a little longer to kind of get the
yeah,
methodology very clear, but I'm going to have a new video coming out soon that is a step by step. This is something I've been doing, and it's a lot of fun.
yeah,
But you know, getting, downloading, installing, and using Android Studio. We're going to use the Android Studio emulator to go to the Play Store, download it. We're going to use the ADB shell script to be able to pull out the APK. We're going to show how to combine split APKs, which is something that can be frustrating. All this is super simple, but it sounds complicated, and that's why people don't do it. A lot of people look over it, right? We're going to do that. We're going to show how to use MobSF, right? Going back to the 104 or however many tools that HackerOne was talking about. One of them is MobSF, a phenomenal, it's built in Django. You can just download it with the Docker container. You upload the APK and it processes it and tells you all types of different information. What can we do with that? What vulnerabilities do we find that let us know that there's possibly, this and that we can do? So for the members, and this is going to be more and more indicative of how my content is going to grow over time, is we're going to have like more teaching methodology and high level stuff as the public content. And then for the members, you can look forward to, this video is probably going to be about 2 hours long of literally just step by step. This is exactly how you do it. Anytime you see this on a program, go do this. If you see this, it's a bug. And it's one that I'm seeing that's overlooked a lot. It's one that a buddy of mine who is a phenomenal mobile pen tester showed me. And so I was like, I'm going to take that. I'm going to make a learning for it. I'm going to give it to my members.
Oh man. Yeah. And it's just an example of kind of the community feeding itself. Like personally, I'm hyped on that because mobile is an area of weakness for me, not kind of understanding, but literally just the hands-on testing methodology. So, just like with so many other things for me personally, I'm benefiting from the trailblazing you're doing because it's going to take something that I understand in theory and give me a very sort of like a way to actually practically apply it, to test it and find all those juicy bugs and feed my biking addiction. So
exactly.
Awesome, cool. So I love it because it sounds like there's going to continue to be content. And by the way, so if you haven't checked it out, this would be from the previous segment from what you've been up to, but that's whatever. If you haven't seen Harrison's video that he did on the 3 reports that he reviewed, those are a gold mine because like basically he goes through and reviews these 3 reports. We jumped into a partner session and we were testing based off of, the sort of attack vectors we saw in those reports. And it was great because like I primed myself watching the report video. I've found a vulnerability similar to pre-account takeover before. So while I was on that session, I was watching, I was participating. On the other screen, I was hacking away, seeing if I could find that kind of the reverse pre-account takeover bug. Fortunately for that program, they did a really, really good job of, there was one additional verification check that basically sort of eliminated that bug as a possibility. But it can be a great primer. So please go check out sort of like the kind of report review. Those are the kind of bite-sized content chunks that honestly, like if you're doing a similar pattern to what I'm doing, I tend to read like hack tricks or just kind of articles like that before I go to bed at night, or I'll watch a video like that. I'll just take that content in right before I go to sleep, and in the morning I get up and use it. This is all part of an ongoing strategy that eventually I'll highlight on my channel around what I'm doing to learn and improve myself, as a bug bounty hunter to, I wouldn't say I'm at the skid level, but, to go from like right above that to, somebody who can really hold their own when it comes to pen testing web apps. But man, all right. So in terms of what else is coming up, is there anything else you want to highlight before we move into the lightning round?
I guess the only other thing I'll mention, and again, by the time this comes out, I think this will already be happening, but as I mentioned, for the past month, I've been working about 12 hours most days, including a lot of weekends and everything too. I've taken a couple breaks and stuff, but I am going to be proactively trying to fight burnout, as you know, because we have known each other for many years. I have the very bad habit of pushing myself until I cannot do anything anymore, and sometimes get like health problems and everything when it's not. So I'm trying to be proactive about that as I move into this new phase of my life. So for the next week, and again, this will probably, I think we're talking about this will come out on Sunday. So assuming that does, right, going into this week, I'm going to be taking a little time off, resting. You'll see that on Discord there. Probably go down to Galveston, do a little fishing, all that type of stuff. But the other thing that I'm going to be doing, and this will kind of come on and off just depending on what needs to do, is I am going to go through the process of selling my house. And then, I'll talk more about that in the future, but there will be some times we'll have to kind of do that as well. So if you see me kind of coming and going a little bit over the next month and a half, I've got some stuff to do to get ready for that. You'll probably see my background change as we move over different places and stuff too, but it is all part of a larger process and a larger plan to make sure that I have the ability to continue doing what I love, which is making content and helping to build up the bug bounty community. So,
absolutely love it. You hit on something that is essential. Like not to, Harrison and I joke, we don't want to ever act like we're like influencing, and talk about our morning routine. I think it'd be hilarious if he dove into a cold plunge, came out with a bug or something, but
just coffee. I stick my head in a big thing of cold brew coffee. And
exactly.
Let's go. Let's find some bugs. I'm ready.
That said, I think the other key to success here, you pointed at it, like you've been working your ass off this week and you're looking forward to fishing next week. I try to give 110% at the day job and in hacking prior to the day job. So that way, if I'm off early enough, I can go hit the trails on my bike. I've got something that I'm working towards when I'm hacking at the keyboard, and having that thing to look forward to that pulls you away from your other passion that's kind of your work is essential. And I think is one of the best ways to guard against burnout. And it's what I kind of call that active recovery. If the process you're in is learn, test, rest, test, rest doesn't necessarily mean sleeping. It doesn't necessarily mean like the, non-sleep deep rest. It can be taking a walk, but it can also just be engaging in a hobby that brings you life where you can turn the brain off. I mean, like if I need a brain break at work, or if I'm hacking, I need a brain break, I'll get up, grab a cup of coffee, come back and just like pick a lock or do something that I can automate that just keeps my hands busy but gives my brain a break. I think it's absolutely essential. The science says that basically when you take a break, your brain goes back through what you just learned. And if you don't take the break, then you're only getting 1x when you could be getting the 2x multiplier out of what you're learning. And when you sleep, apparently, your brain goes through it backwards, which sounds like some Inception mind stuff, but hey, we'll leave that out. All right, so we are coming close to wrapping this up. For the lightning round, I think this week the lightning round question is going to be, what are you most looking forward to next week, if there is one thing you're looking forward to?
Next week, like I'm on vacation?
Yeah.
There's a moment. So I like one of my favorite things, I guess, or one of my bigger motivators is that I want to feel proud of what I've done, work-wise when I go into that rest and everything too.
Yeah.
I love the feeling, and I really learned this waiting tables when I was younger. I loved working a 12-hour shift, feel like I did a good day, and then get home and sit down and relax. So what I'm most looking forward to, because I am very proud of what I've done up until this point, and so it's that first of all is it. Like going into a vacation, being proud of what you're done, and you feel like you've earned that vacation is phenomenal. There's going to be a moment after I've gone down there that I've gone and, picked up a nice little case of IPAs or whatever and go sit down there and have my fishing pole set up stuff. And I'm going to sit down and open that first beer and relax and kind of take that sigh of relief and everything and just kind of let my mind melt away. That's what I'm most looking forward. That moment is always like, that's what I think I live my life just chasing those little moments like that, where it's just everything comes together. And I think I've done enough. And I think I'm really like, I'm just proud of what I've done. I feel great. I'm happy. I feel healthy. And I want to sit down and just kind of enjoy that relaxing moment a little bit.
Love that. Well, I'm looking forward to that for you. And since, I am not only, working to, I guess, show run, but I also like to participate in this format that we've got going here. So I think if I've got an answer for what I'm most looking forward to next week, what is next week? Next week, oh, actually, some former colleagues are going to be in town, and I get to see some folks I don't get to see very often. So I'm going to get to sit down and have a very nice dinner, probably on some company's dime. Don't tell.
That's how you do it.
But I'm going to get to sit down and have a very nice dinner with some folks that I love and respect, because the thing that motivates me to work is the people I work with.
Oh, yeah.
I don't care what I'm doing, as long as I'm surrounded by people who motivate me to give my best because I can trust that they're going to have my back if I fail. And this group of people has provided a lot of mentorship for me. So I cannot wait to sit down and chat with them. So that's what we got coming up. So a few things you might notice about this episode. I didn't even tell Harrison this, but his video is kind of fading in and out a little bit, so it's kind of zooming in and out. I think it's the lights in the background, but
oh shoot, I could have locked that.
hey, it's not a big deal, Harrison, because I think it actually, I think the effect adds to it. If folks if it really messes with folks, tell us in the comments. We'll fix it next time. But if Harrison and I, we were very clear on one goal of this kind of a format. We want the content and what we're talking about to be compelling and to be helpful, and to help fill in the blanks for some folks who are following his work. We also want to make it clear to anybody out there watching who has money or a company or wants to get into some corporate sponsorship that we could definitely use it, and that would help up the production value. So if you like what you're seeing, you want to support it. If you're an individual, the easiest way to support this is to join Harrison's channel, become a member, and outside of that, if you're in a position to help out and want to be a corporate sponsor because you see the value in helping to continue to educate folks in the InfoSec community in an area where it's going to fast track them into meaningful contribution, please get in touch as well. I think that you can probably figure out how to get in touch with us. If you can't, then just basically send a DM or even just leave a comment. We'll send you a DM on the YouTube video. But I am going to say this was a huge success, Harrison. Thank you so much for giving an hour and a half of your time, even more, to help continue to educate the community. Tell them what you got coming out. Any parting shots before we hop off?
I don't know. I mean, I think this was great. Thank you so much for everything that you did putting it together. I'm really excited, man. Obviously, we worked together for a long time. I got all the respect in the world for you as well. And I think that we're going to be able to do some really, really great stuff. I'm excited.
Hell yeah, we are. All right. Well, you can expect to see another episode like this one coming out probably in about 2 or 3 weeks. And then in addition to that, you can also expect to see some more long form podcasts coming from Harrison and me, where we talk about other topics, including stuff we were talking about earlier, internal politics, company stage, all kinds of different stuff. If you've got ideas for future episodes of podcasts outside of this, the What You've Been Up To format, throw those in the comments as well. If you like what you saw, give us a subscribe. If you didn't like what you saw, I guess go tell people on Reddit. But thanks again for joining us. We will catch you next time. Over and out.
That's great.
To the club in the young to you power. Going to the club in the young to you power. Going to the club in the young to you power. Going to the club in the young to you power. Going to the club in the young